everyone, I'm your host Cadence, and welcome back to another episode of Project Honesty, a podcast designed for young adults, by a young adult, to gain brutally honest, friend-like advice, as well as provide a platform for young adults to form opinions, color outside of the lines, take deep dives into current events, and most importantly, have fun. This is Project Honesty, navigating reality with real conversations and diverse opinions. Hey! I hope everybody is having a good day, and welcome to episode 20 of Project Honesty. If you haven't already, please go listen to last episode called Crisis in the Classroom. I discuss a lot of issues with public education and the public education system in general. I talk about a little bit of an experience I had a while ago in the public education system that really stood out to me, but then I also introduce some facts about public education and how it is actually hurting kids rather than benefiting them. That is available on Spotify and YouTube. This episode is kind of bouncing off last episode. I'm still talking about education and whatnot. Today is more so about teachers. I want to talk about great teachers and bad teachers because last episode I didn't really focus on teachers. I focused more on the system and not the adults within it. If you listened to last episode, which I hope you did, I tell a story about a recent conflict I had with two adult staff members in June and how that experience really showed me some of the issues within public education and how it is taking respect away from students. Today, my focus is on my teachers that I've had, past and present. So there's not a lot of facts in here. These are just experiences I've had with teachers, the ones who have negatively influenced my academic life, the ones who have positively influenced my life, and just a takeaway from those experiences as a collective and what I've learned from both the negative and the positive. Before I start, I just want to say that teachers deal with a lot. And when I talk about teachers on here, especially later when I get into my negative experiences with past teachers, it may seem that I hate teachers, but I want to clear one thing up. I don't. Just because of one negative experience I had doesn't mean that they are a bad person or a bad teacher. Teachers deal with a lot of shit. They are underpaid, overworked, understaffed, underfunded, and all of these things lead to a lack of motivation and patience in the workplace. And sometimes the stress that teachers feel can also be felt by students, and it affects student mental health and academic performance. So before I start, thank you, teachers. You are the leaders of the next generation, and I appreciate everything I've learned from you guys, past and present, whether I've had a positive or negative experience with you. So thank you. When looking at how teachers hold an influential role in a student's life and mental health and academic performance, you gotta take it back to when these kids are young. Children and teachers start having interactions and connections around age 4 or 5. This can just be like through childcare and like kindergarten, but sometimes this can start earlier, like around 3, when kids are placed in daycare. And teachers are typically the first adult role model to children outside of family. So these teachers are the adults that these kids are looking up to and are told to follow and listen to. And so teachers play the biggest influential role when it comes to the relationship between the child and school. Children wouldn't have a bond to the educational academic environment if there weren't teachers. Teachers are kind of the clay that holds those two things together. Last episode, I talked about this a little bit, but teacher attitude and personality can directly affect their students' outlook on life. And I touched on it a little bit last episode, but I didn't necessarily get into it. But during my research for this episode, I read a study from Concordia International School in Shanghai, China, and they had a really good article that talks about the importance of good teachers and how they are important beyond the boundaries of education. Numerous studies show that students who have teachers who are easygoing, humble, kind, caring, and empathetic people tend to do better academically and emotionally. So not only do teachers influence how a student is in the academic setting, but they also influence them as people, and their attitude to their job and the people in their job really affects how these children act in the real world and how they emotionally regulate themselves and how they interact with others. It is shown that positive, encouraging, and confident communication between teachers and their students drastically impact the student's outlook on life. So again, it's important to have teachers that really care about their students and what they're learning, and that student's education beyond academic, but just the things that you can learn in life. There always seems to be a certain situation and attitude with teachers. With the stresses that these teachers face, sometimes it's really hard for them to maintain a positive, encouraging, uplifting attitude throughout the school year. And again, this stress can be sensed and felt by students through negative interactions and communications. And that's what I want to talk about today, because sometimes it is the teacher's fault. And I would know, because if you heard last episode, that experience was really blown out of proportion by the adults in that situation. I don't know what it's caused by, because I'm not in the minds of my teacher, but I think that when teachers are stressed, it is more common to run into negative interactions and experience communication that doesn't feel welcoming or encouraging. And so I was unsure of how to split this episode up, so I kind of split it into two chunks. First, I want to talk about negative experiences I've had with teachers, and then positive experiences I've had second. I'm going to do about 4 for each, and it's kind of split up into experience and then effect of that experience. These experiences that I'm going to talk about on here have been throughout my whole academic life. So from like grade 1 and so on. There's some that aren't academic related necessarily, but it has to do with the teachers that I've had and how I've seen them interact with me and how I felt their impact on me emotionally, academically, socially, things like that. And then at the end of talking about these two kinds of experiences with multiple different teachers, I want to do a takeaway section where I just go over my general takeaway of how it is to interact with teachers. Okay, so starting with the negative. Now, I've actually told most of my big negative experiences already on this podcast. There was one in Debate to Educate where I talked about how I wasn't able to effectively research using non-government sources because my teacher told me to. Now, that wasn't necessarily focused on the teacher. That was, again, about how broken the public school system is, but that was a conflict I've had with one teacher that was kind of negative. It got resolved quite fast. And then again, another negative experience that I talked about was in the most recent episode, Crisis in the Classroom, and I talked about a conflict I had with 2 adults. Keep in mind, that was really shocking to see adults behave like that in an academic setting. So you can go listen to those 2 episodes to hear those experiences. But now I'm going to talk about some little ones that have actually had quite a big impact on my outlook in the academic and social space. So the first experience I want to talk about is my 6th grade teacher telling me that I was closed-minded and negative and that I wouldn't learn anything. The effect of this experience is I felt discouraged as a student. I felt like I would never be good enough or smart enough to have a place in the academic space, and I felt quite stupid when she told me this. It really made me down on myself because I was told I was negative and told that I wasn't going to learn anything from that. And it made me feel like I wasn't learning properly. And I still think about this experience today because I'm still a student, and it still causes me to question my abilities as a student in a negative way. And it causes me to doubt myself and my abilities to learn effectively. And that experience was really shocking because I was quite young. How old am I in 6th grade? I think I was like 11, 12, maybe? Yeah, 11. I'm pretty sure. I'm not, I think I was 11. And that was, again, in public school. I was shocked at the time, but then looking back on this experience, I was like, whoa, that shouldn't have happened. The next experience is that in 5th grade, someone drew a girl on the whiteboard. It was like, I think this was an after-school care, but a girl I was friends with at the time drew a person on the whiteboard, and one of the teachers came over and said, quote, "Let's make her a skinny girl so she's pretty." Let that sit with you for a second. Just hearing someone say that in front of me as a 5th grader, and now in 5th grade I was already insecure because I cared about what people thought, and so it introduced more securities than I already had. it made me question, why is being larger bad? This teacher made it seem like to be pretty, you had to be skinny. And this might not seem like the biggest deal, but I was already insecure because I have always been the larger girl out of any group. And so even though that comment wasn't directly made at me, I felt offended because does that mean that that teacher doesn't see people like me as beautiful? It was very an unwelcoming comment as a young girl to hear, and definitely something that should not have been said at all, let alone in front of two young girls who may or may not struggle with body issues. And so looking back on it, that is so messed up for an adult teacher to say. It shouldn't have happened. Another experience is that in 3rd grade, I was yelled at by a sub in front of the whole class because of the fact that I called the sub out for plagiarizing a whole website. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. She literally copy and pasted a whole website into a Google Doc. And this experience was embarrassing because nobody likes to be yelled at in front of their peers. It's scary. It's embarrassing. It's an awful experience. And personally, I can't handle people yelling at me. It's like triggering, I think. I can't handle people yelling at me, and that's been from a young age till now. Like, if you yell at me, I'm done. I can't respond anymore because I'm genuinely scared. In this moment, I started crying because I felt unheard and I felt stupid and embarrassed because I didn't have to be yelled at like that, and it wasn't fair to me. It honestly wasn't fair to anybody else in the room having to witness that, because a teacher shouldn't be yelling at all, especially to a student in front of other students. It definitely shouldn't have happened. But you know, I was young, and clearly that sub had a power trip on me, and well, that happened. One of the last negative experiences that I wanted to talk about here was actually pretty recent, within the last year. It was a 10th grade drama sub. Now, she wasn't a sub for like one day. She was with us for, I think, 2 months. And this teacher would lose her shit on the whole class all the time. She hated student creativity and feedback. A lot of my theater friends and drama friends know exactly who I'm talking about. And when this teacher was teaching us, it was very creatively limiting. You couldn't explore your artistic style because she didn't like it. It got frustrating throughout the semester because she talked down to us a lot. She did like attention grabbers that you see 3rd grade teachers on TikTok using. And high school students shouldn't be talked to like toddlers. We're not like stupid. We can understand what you're saying if you say it like an adult. This teacher also wasn't open to new ideas, which in drama is like a problem, because in a drama acting space, you need to be able to be open to new ideas and a creative way of doing things. And the fact that this teacher like didn't care about what we had to say at all is actually a problem, because it limits our learning as students and kind of had a negative impact on all of us and our attitude towards that drama class for the 2-month period we had her. She was also very by the book. Like, she would always go back. She'd be like, in university. Well, why don't you be a human? Stop being by the book, because all of the other drama teachers don't do that. You're the only one who does it. Because being by the book in general, but especially in a drama class, limits student creativity. I remember certain moments in her classes where I would try to make up a really unique storyline for an improv exercise with one of my friends, and she hated it. She would shut it down immediately. And it's like, oh, okay. I thought this was supposed to be an open, creative space rather than a by-the-book lecture space, you know? Now, I've had a lot of negative experiences in the public school system. A lot of them I get into on here, but I don't want to unfold all of them. Moving into the positives, again, I have 4 really positive experiences that I want to share on here, and I just want to go through the effect that those had on me. The first positive experience that I can remember was actually in public school, which is quite shocking. After a lot of you guys know my history with public school and my open dislike for public school, it is actually shocking that I had a positive experience with a teacher within this system. I remember in elementary school, there was this certain librarian, I won't say her name, but she was really empathetic and understanding when my other teachers weren't. And she actually understood that I was different, and she could see who I was and not who people wanted me to be. I remember I would sit with her if I got to school early in the morning, and I would talk to her about issues I was having in school with other teachers, but also with my friends who weren't actually my friends. And I connected with her on a really deep level. She understood that I wasn't emotionally the same as everybody else, and I was, and still am, emotionally mature for my age. A big thing that she understood about me that still a lot of people don't understand about me is that I speak my mind, and I wasn't afraid to say how I felt. And just that, she made me feel so welcomed at a school where most of the time I didn't feel like I belonged. That was in elementary school, and elementary school was hell, if you guys haven't picked up on that already. And so this teacher really was so caring and nurturing to me, and now looking back on it, she was kind of the only mental and emotional support I had in that school. She had a really big positive impact on my life. The next experience is with a teacher in 8th grade. He was my English/leadership teacher, and he always let me choose the format of which I did projects to help me get my work done faster and more effectively. Now, this is probably because he got his degree in philosophy. He's my favorite philosopher, and he's overall just an inspirational human. And he really took investment in his students' lives outside of academics. He really cared about each one of his students in a unique way. He helped me through a lot of issues in my personal life, and he acted as sort of this father figure and this mentor, and I still look up to him today. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he is still a mentor to me, and I really appreciate everything he's done for me. And one of the things I admire about him most is his open teaching style. He gave me leadership over my own learning, and I had a lot of creative freedom in his class because he knew that not all kids learn the same. And he was a very understanding, patient, and creative teacher who truly understands that all students are different. And that made me feel really empowered in my learning. And in his class, and even when I visit him now, I feel extremely respected in his space. I feel so respected and so heard. And he was a great teacher that I've had. I talk about him a lot outside of this podcast because he is actually just one of my favorite humans. So I think he can tell who he is if he's listening to this. So thank you. Next one is that my junior high drama teacher and my 9th grade English teacher sitting with me as I cried about issues in my personal life, and they said they always love me and support me. This experience stemmed from last year. I was having a really hard time, and I was struggling with stuff in my personal life that affected my academic performance, and I really felt lost. Now, these two teachers caught me before I could fall. They took time out of their day to help me with my mental health, and they really listened to me and provided relatable advice that made me feel seen and made me feel heard and welcomed, even though I was going through a lot of things that they probably didn't understand, but they really cared about me. In a time where I was really struggling, this time I didn't even know if anyone cared at all. And these two teachers made me feel really safe in a very vulnerable moment I was having in my life. That just shows that with a little bit of extra work, teachers can really connect with their students. And this showed me that teachers do care, which is something that I wasn't used to after being in public school for 6 years. This kind of caring nature about a teacher was something I was unfamiliar with. But now I am so grateful to have had these teachers because they make a really big impact on my life. One of them actually follows this podcast. I hope they know who they are. And if they're listening to this, I just want to say thank you so much because you two have made a really big impact on my life. One of these teachers actually literally held me when I cried in the hallway in front of everybody, and it was really embarrassing, but they made me feel so comforted and okay that I was feeling emotion. So again, thank you to those teachers. The last positive experience I want to talk about is my 10th grade Indigenous Studies teacher giving me extensions on half my assignments, knowing that I didn't have time to complete all of them by the due date. She also let me work independently in the library a lot of the time because she knows that that was the way I learned best in that class. At the time, I was really struggling to balance school, life, and acting because I was fresh in high school. I just started a show. I had a lot of tough classes that semester. And after telling her all of this, she really listened to me. She could see that I was juggling a lot. And based on the work that I did earlier in the semester in her class, she knew that I have an incredible work ethic and understood that I would get these assignments done. I just needed a little bit more time to complete them. And she provided me the time and the space and the trust to make me feel seen as a student. And she was just very empathetic to my life and the things that were going on. And that was not specific to me. She understood that students in general have a life outside of the classroom and that life is much bigger outside of the academic space. And so she really let me learn at my own pace, just kept giving me the encouragement to keep going, which was something I really needed at the time because of all the things I was trying to juggle. And so I hope this teacher listens to this because she was just an incredible human. And I'm actually taking another one of her classes this upcoming school year, so I'm excited to have her as a teacher again. So what is my takeaway from all of this? There are good teachers who act human and take the extra step to understand their students on a personal level rather than just an academic level. And these teachers understand that students have other priorities and obligations besides being a student. Some of these obligations can be being a sibling, working, playing a sport, or just investing in their personal passion. But there are also bad teachers who lack many of the personality traits that make teachers good and make them a supportive and empathetic individual for their students to learn from and follow. And so whether you've had a negative experience or a positive experience with a teacher, you can definitely learn and observe something from each situation. I know that I have. So despite all the negative things I've observed in the academic environment, I've learned from it. I just want to say again, thank you to all teachers. Y'all make an impact. You're leading the next generation, and you are a really big part of every child's life. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Project Honesty. You can find Project Honesty on Spotify at Project Honesty or on YouTube at Project_Honesty. And to keep up to date with new episodes, you can head over to Project Honesty's Instagram, which is at Project_Honesty24. We also have a TikTok, which is at Project.Honesty. To help spread this podcast everywhere, tell a friend or share with family about Project Honesty. You can direct them over to any of the social media, so the Instagram, the TikTok, Spotify, the YouTube, to help them learn more. And remember to subscribe and follow. Click the bell icon for updates when I post. And remember, the more listeners, the bigger the family.